This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
Hello, I'm Maritza Barone. Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard, read, or were told something that you simply could not unhear?
Something that made you stop in your tracks and helped you to see the world differently in some way, a better way. On this podcast, we create those life-changing moments for you through interviews with some of the world's most profound people around the globe. We explore groundbreaking ideas in health and well-being.
What we're really doing is getting to the root cause of your symptom. And often we find that that is an emotional block that we have been carrying around in our body that's become almost crystallized and created a physical symptom.
Relationships.
And for women as well, when I talk about respect, it's called respecting yourself, which is don't overgive. Women will tend to put themselves one down, and then wake up at 40 and go, wait a second, I am woman, I deserve respect.
Personal and professional transformation.
This is true of any skill. You only develop it by doing it. And so, if you don't get out there and just start doing it and being a bit rough around the edges at the beginning, you can't work on your craft. And so it can't turn into something.
Spirituality.
Because I think when we know who we really are, we think we're our name and our body and our form and our hair and our clothes and our skin and but when we know who we really are as infinite beings, we're free.
And so much more. So settle in. This might just be a big day for you where you hear something that changes your life in the most transformative way. Welcome back to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Thanks for joining us today on this special episode. Now, this is an important topic, I believe, and I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed by listening to what we share today, because you can make baby steps in these areas that create a big impact. But I want you to start thinking about, can you trust everything you read on your food, your cleaning, and your personal care labels and packages? How do you know when you need to start questioning some of the things that we put into and onto our bodies? The idea, like I said, of living a low-tox life can be overwhelming when we start to do our own research. So I've invited Soulla Chamberlain to talk us through the top things we need to be aware of. Soulla is the creator and director of Star Anise Organic Wholefoods, which she started in her home kitchen in 2010, and she's a well-known advocate on low-tox living and using food as medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to understand food labeling, the industrial food ingredients and the health impacts of them, how to eat more healthily and reduce toxins, and I was curious, so I asked about the pros and cons of plant-based milk, and so much more that we will learn today during this conversation. I hope you enjoy. Please reach out if you have any ongoing questions. I'll put Soulla's contact details in the show notes as well if you want to continue doing your own research. All right, welcome, Soulla Chamberlain, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thank you so much, Maritza.
Now, I found you a couple of months ago, actually, on my social media because I was drinking my morning cup of tea, which I absolutely love. And anyone who knows me knows how much I love tea and chai. But I transferred over to plant milk, and I noticed in my cup of tea that there was like a film of oil just floating on top of my milk. And I'm thinking to myself, that can't be good. I don't think that's good. So I started to sort of dig in, and I'm pretty good with reading labels and understanding things, but I turned the label around on my oat milk and was pretty mortified as to what I found was on the label. So I found your Instagram, and I found where you were sharing about plant milks and guiding people on the best way to choose that, for example. So I want to say thanks for that. Yeah. But I'm still now trying to find that ideal replacement for my milk in my morning tea, which is a whole other question. I think I've tried every milk out there on the market, but it's an interesting one, and I think we can jump into milks soon. But firstly, It's an interesting one when we start to question labels, isn't it? It's an interesting one when we start to question things that are on our packaging.
Yes, because, once I heard a lady say in a documentary, I just thought that all food was safe. I just thought that if you go to the supermarket, food was just food. And in an ideal world, it would be. And one of the greatest disillusions is that just because something is allowed to be sold doesn't make it safe. I think if you really let that land, that is a complete game changer for you in your purchasing decisions, and you start becoming more conscious and intentional with what you buy. Because if it's on a supermarket shelf or a pharmacy shelf or on the grocery shelf, we can't very sadly assume that it's safe. We've outsourced that now to other people, so we have to be more scrupulous with, reading the labels. Once upon a time, we were all hunter-gatherers or farmers, and we had that direct control. We knew exactly what we were growing, what we were hunting, what we were gathering. We did it ourselves. But the minute you outsource something, you have to have a little bit more agency and responsibility as to what it is, what are the ingredients. And this comes down to what we call provenance, source, and processing. So what's in it and what's been done to it. That's the source and processing of our food and our personal care products and our cleaning products. And nothing really is more important than that in terms of our health. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you did say something in that rings so true to me, is that it is sad and it is true. And when you have that realization that you can't trust everything that you read on these packages, you do start to feel a little bit lost and not know where to turn. And I think you've probably been through that. Do you have a catalyst story where, you made these initial realizations in your life and now have become such an advocate to speak up about it?
Yeah, well, I guess it started over 25 years ago. I've just turned 50 this year, and about 25 years ago was one of my first aha moments where I was sitting on the grassy knoll in North Bondi, and a friend of mine was peeling the apple, and I'm like, why are you peeling it? And they're like, oh, because they spray apples with this, farmers with this pesticide called glyphosate that's been, does nasty things in the body. And I'm like, I could actually see the waxy residue. And I'm like, oh, imagine that inside us. That can't be good. And then that's when that sort of started one of the catalysts. There's been many catalysts for my health journey, and really starting to question everything and starting to read the labels on things. And a really good rule of thumb that I picked up somewhere along the line was, if your grandmother didn't recognize it or eat it, then don't consume it. So then, like, would my grandmother have eaten that? Would my grandmother have recognized that? Or your great grandmother? So that was a really good general rule of thumb. And once you can't unknow. So once you start reading things and you're going, well, that sounds like a science lab. Do I really want that in my body? And what effect does it have? And then you start reading about the effects that these things have on your body, on your hormones, on your immune system, on your digestive system, on your brain health, gut health. Once you can't unknow.
You can't unhear either.
Exactly.
And I think
I love the name of that podcast. It's brilliant.
Well, it was exactly the reason why I started it, to be really honest with you. And I shared this with you before we hit record, is that I heard what you're sharing today in the form of someone else's story. And it struck me in such a profound way that I actually had to go home and clear the wardrobe out and look at the products and read the labels. And I think it starts to make you question a lot more things beyond food and beyond what you're putting on your body as well, because you do start to go, okay, I'm not going to take everything at face value anymore.
Yes. Yeah, you start questioning a lot of things, like the onion peel, just, a lot of the things. Sometimes I think, oh my gosh, everything that I've been taught as a kid from the government is just upside down, inside out, back to front. And it's just like, I've had to just really disassemble my whole life. And that can be quite a scary process for many people. A lot of people don't like change, the phrase cognitive dissonance. It's like, because if I have to unscramble that, then it means I also have to unscramble that and that and that and that. And some people like me really lean in, and I love that journey. I'm unafraid to open up. But there have been many, many moments, particularly in the past few years, where it's like, really? we were so wrong. Humanity got it so wrong. Yeah, it's a journey of truth. So one of my highest values is truth, along with health and freedom. It's like, being really authentic and standing in integrity and being unafraid to ask the tricky, difficult questions. And, I'm the pesky customer that calls up suppliers and really asks. And I got caught out the other day because I know the brands that I use, trust and recommend. And so I got into the habit of just, pulling that off the supermarket shelf and not realizing that some companies then change the ingredients halfway through. So, but I have super fastidious followers, very ultra nerdy, which I love. And I learn a lot from them. And they're like, oh, did you know that they've just recently added soy lecithin in that bread? And I'm like, oh my God, no. So you kind of always got to be on your toes. Everything you buy that's not single ingredient, everything you buy in a packet, container, tube, carton, you have to read the ingredients. And if your great grandmother didn't recognize it, put it away.
Let's talk on that a little bit now. So you flip it around and there's 27 ingredients that you don't recommend. Are there any that are really like no-goes that we should be just throwing the packet back on the shelf immediately?
Yeah, so in terms of food, so we'll look at, food is a bit separate to personal care products and cleaning products. If we look at food, the main ones are your industrial seed oils. They have no place in the human body. They are complete newcomers in the human body. And they're, in a word, toxic and they create inflammation, and inflammation is the root cause of all modern disease. Regardless of the name of the disease, whatever you want to call it, it all stems back from toxic overload and or suboptimal nourishment. So by industrial seed oils, I'm referring things to vegetable oils, the 3 C's, canola, cottonseed and corn oil, the 3 S's, sunflower, safflower and soybean oil. And then, as I said, vegetable oil and things like even peanut oil is very inflammatory. So, and your trans fats as well, hydrogenated fats. So they get stored in the body. The body doesn't really know what to do with them. It's impossible to detoxify them in a short space of time. It takes years. Highly inflammatory, no nutritive value, empty calories. So they're no-goes, particularly for pregnant women and children. And they're found, sadly, in most packaged foods. They're found in pretty much all restaurants, bar a handful. And I just recently, last year, wrote a blog post that went quite viral, my seed oil-free cafe and restaurant guide to Sydney. There's literally, I can count them on one hand, that have a really strict no seed oil policy, which includes my retail store, Broth Bar and Larder in Bronte. And the reason why seed oils are used is because they're cheap. So we want to make sure that we're using fats that our body recognize, traditional fats like, butter, ghee, olive oil, coconut oil, lard, beef tallow, all those beautiful, nourishing traditional fats. The second thing that's a no-go would be your refined sugars. So, pretty much I think now most people understand that refined sugar isn't good for you. Everyone's heard of, quitting sugar and that journey. So if there are some sweeteners, we want to opt once again for natural sweeteners like maple syrup, honey, coconut nectar, coconut sugar, blackstrap molasses, stevia, yacon syrup. They're all okay, in small amounts because, we don't want to overdo those. But the sugar, the high fructose sugar, even agave syrup, even though that's natural, it's 90% fructose, goes straight to the liver, leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So very easy way to get fat, eat a lot of agave syrup. And then the third category would be your refined starches, like your refined wheat, which is once again ubiquitous. Most people are having cereal or toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for dinner, cakes and muffins, biscuits, all in between, that are all made from refined wheat or wheat products. So what people don't appreciate, even though it's very much pushed by mainstream dietetics, those refined grains are essentially sugar. So while most people understand, I've got to quit sugar, what they don't appreciate is grains are in effect sugar. Okay, they all get turned into sugar very, very quickly in the body. Empty fillers, really not much, if any, nutritive value. And the wheat of today is such a far cry from the wheat of, 10,000 years ago. So if we are going to eat grains, I recommend they be properly prepared, like sourdough bread or soaked rice, amaranth, quinoa, buckwheat. So there's a lot of preparation involved. And if you've got the gluten, the celiac gene, try and avoid wheat. So refined sugar, refined starches like your grains and seed oils, they're what I call public enemy 1, 2, and 3. And then, of course, anything that looks like it's come out of a lab, colors, flavors, preservatives, anything with numbers. MSG is very neurotoxic. So that'd be the main categories, those kind of 4 categories.
Yeah. And it can get overwhelming, but I think if you find an ingredients list that's overwhelming and that you don't know what they are, then it's probably best to just walk away from it.
Most of your trolley or basket should be single ingredient, so, people can recognize the broccoli, the fruit, the piece of meat, like sort of single. If most of your shopping trolley is single ingredient, that's a good start. I mean, those single ingredients can still be sprayed, genetically modified like corn, things like that. But, we're talking baby steps here. So, one step at a time, start moving away from packeted food as much as you can into single ingredient food. And then from there, kind of got to look at things like the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. I've always got that on my Instagram highlight reel. So if you're shopping, the clean 15 pretty much never sprayed in Australia. So I never buy, for example, organic avocados. I just go to the convenience store and get, because I know they're never sprayed, whereas the dirty dozen, things like peaches, strawberries, the berries, they're pretty much always sprayed. So at farmers markets, I just say, hey, mate, do you spray with anything? They don't necessarily need to be certified organic, but in substance organic, something grown and reared the way nature intended without the sprays on them, because that's, a toxin in the body. And we just want to lower our toxic load. I don't believe we can completely eliminate toxins in this day and age. So it's just about lowering it where we can for the things that are in our control. And what is in our control are the food we eat and buy, the personal care products, the cleaning products, and our choice of medicines. Okay, so things really that we're bringing into our home. I always say that as women in particular, we're gatekeepers of our home. We have been bestowed this awesome responsibility of what we let in that directly impacts not only our health and our family's health, because women, will buy things that their children and their partners will pretty much just use and eat. So that responsibility is on us. It's such an awesome responsibility. So we really need to become more mindful, more conscious and intentional with what we're bringing into our house, because if it impacts our health, our children's health, our partner's health, our pet's health, it's going to impact humanity. So I always say that as women, the health of the planet lies in our hands. It's such an awesome responsibility.
Taking a quick minute to interrupt this conversation to let you know about something exciting I am growing. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. And I've launched a podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we're looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. Also, if you have something important to say and you don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help you to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light online sessions to help you get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com. So what are these toxins actually doing against us, we should say? What are they doing to us?
As I said, all toxins create inflammation, and inflammation is the root cause of all modern disease, regardless of the name of the disease. But if you want to break it down, they fall into 5 main categories, regardless of the name of them. So, if you look at the names of some of the toxins on, say, your average favorite beauty products, personal care products, cleaning products, there'll be things like, they'll have phthalates or propylene glycol or bismuth or talc or oxybenzone. But look, I said to people, don't worry so much about the name of them. Once you've got your trusted brands, awesome. And I can discuss that in a minute. But what they actually do, they fall into, when I broke it down, 5 main categories. So some of them are carcinogens, which is a fancy word for saying they cause cancer. Okay. And some of them are, they're known carcinogens. We know that these things cause cancer, and yet they're still allowed to be sold on the shelf. And that's when people's minds go like, that octopus emoji. It's like, surely if it was that bad, the government wouldn't allow it to be sold, but that's not the case. We know in our capitalist culture, it's not the case. So carcinogens is the first bucket. Second bucket is endocrine disruptors, which is a fancy word for meaning that they mess up our hormones, often by mimicking our hormones. So then our body is like, oh, I've got enough of this hormone in my body. I don't need to produce more, because it's tricked into thinking that it's got more than what it does. Another category is allergens. So coughing, wheezing, sneezing, headaches, migraine headaches. Okay, all just from the products, everyday products, what I call them everyday chemicals that you're buying on a supermarket pharmacy shelf. Another category is microbiome disruptors. So they wipe out, so things like all the antibacterial products that the world went crazy over in the last few years, wipe out all the beneficial bacteria in and on us, which creates an opportunity for the more opportunistic, virulent, pathogenic bacteria to take a foothold. Then we get sicker. So then we use more antibiotics and more antibacterial products, wiping out every steric of beneficial bacteria, getting more sick. And so you're in this spiral doom loop. Neurotoxins is the last category. So they affect the brain. So things like aluminium, which are found in pretty much most conventional deodorants, are neurotoxic. And, a lot of people using aluminium cookware, things like that. And these toxins are found in, makeup, scented candles, reeds, aftershaves, perfumes. And the problem with personal care products and cleaning products is that a lot of them don't need to be listed. The ingredients don't need to be listed on the label. So with food, the beneficial thing about that is all of the ingredients, for better or for worse, are listed. So you can actually look at it, read it. I don't recognize that. My grandmother wouldn't recognize that, put that back. But with personal care products and cleaning products, they don't all need to be listed. So if you take, say, for example, perfume, parfum, fragrance, a lot of those are trademarked. And that word, parfum, fragrance, perfume, could be code for thousands of ingredients, none of which need to be listed. And all those chemicals are in this chemical cocktail that haven't been tested altogether. Okay, so we know that perfumes are endocrine disruptive, carcinogenic, neurotoxic, and here we are slathering on our babies and our kids' bodies each and every day. And their perfumes are pretty much in all personal care products and cleaning products, because without them, they probably stink, So we're sort of brainwashed into thinking, things got a nice fragrance, it must be good for, it's nice, scent, it must be good for our body, but sadly not. So now that you know and you've heard that, you can't unknow that. Yeah. And it's not all like people listening to this go, oh my God, well, how do I live? This is all doom and gloom. It's not about deprivation. It's just about healthy swaps. So the problem, yes, it's there, but the solution is a phrase that I coined 15, 20 years ago, healthy swaps. So there's a healthy swap now for pretty much everything on the market, which is amazing. So when I started on this journey 25 years ago, a lot of the time there weren't healthy swaps. So if my kids said, I want some, healthy popcorn or healthy this or healthy that or healthy nail polish or, healthy red lipstick, like there weren't any, or we'd have to make it yourself, which could be like really time consuming and fiddly, especially me, I'm not a do-it-yourselfer. But nowadays, with more awareness, there's all these incredible brands that have flooded the market, which is such a beautiful thing to bear witness to. There is no excuse anymore, because we can healthy swap everything. Okay. And this is where, young entrepreneurs have shown great initiative and have created businesses. And that was how I created my brand, Star Anise Organic Wholefoods, 15 years ago, because I saw gaps in the market. It's like, okay, now that I've educated myself on what we as a species have biologically evolved to eat. And I don't want to, I'm totally disillusioned now by mainstream dietetics and the, pharmaceutically funded healthcare industry. All right, I want to set down a more holistic, natural path. Okay, now that I've educated myself on ancestral diets and what our ancient DNA expects, no one's making and selling bone broth and sauerkraut and kimchi and activated nuts and refined sugar-free raw treats and chicken liver pate and slow cooked casserole. So I got back in the kitchen and I started making this food myself. And we, in a space of a matter of months, if not weeks, we went from barely surviving to thriving, or just from changing our diet. And that was my big aha moment of, oh my God, the power of, food as medicine. It's the most, powerful and natural medicine known to mankind. But no one's making and selling this food. So I had no choice but to go in and make it myself, Had Sally Fallon's traditional Nourishing Traditions book and started from there. And everything was in ounces and pounds and very American. So I started writing my own recipes. And then through word of mouth, friends were like, oh, can you just, make some surplus, extra bone broth, extra casserole, extra sauerkraut, extra activated nuts. And then friends of friends came knocking at the door, and just through word of mouth, the circle just kept expanding and expanding. And one mother's helper turned into like 15 over the years. And, I had my babies and didn't want to go back to being a corporate lawyer. So I'm like, okay, I just, damn, this is what I'm destined now to do. I'm on my soul's path. I'm going to be nourishing, not only myself and my family, but also humanity in all my community. And it just felt really right that, when you're on your soul's path, you just feel like you're in flow. And I just started making all this food from the garage and kitchen of my home with all these mothers helpers. And then the universe gave me a shove and ended up setting up Broth Bar and Larder in 2015, which now employs about 25 people, which is kind of crazy because I never set out to start a business. It was just, a mama on a healing journey, healing myself after numerous health crises, and my little baby boy who ended up in hospital as a little vegetarian baby. And that's another kind of story, which we can discuss if you want, but healing him and myself from all our health crises. And so that's how it started. So there are so many opportunities now for healthy swapping that there is really no excuse. But having said all that, there is a lot of greenwashing. There are a lot of greenwashed products. And what greenwashing is where brands portray that their products are more clean than what they actually are, whether they're food or personal care products or cleaning products or natural perfumes or natural medicines. People see the labels and words like botanical, environmental, natural, eco, with lots of greenery and trees and pictures of the globe and all that. And it's like, okay. But then upon closer inspection, it's like, oh, there's some hidden nasties in there, like PEGs, which are endocrine disruptors, or synthetic fragrances, which we've discussed, or the soy lecithins and things like that. So that's where I really have pioneered or helped people choose and educate them on choosing brands. In my health coaching sessions or in my Food as Medicine digital package, I have a suppliers table and I list my favorite brands and where to shop. And then for those who aren't in Sydney, there's a page detailing the due diligence questions that you ask wherever you are in the world. So what to look for when you're buying something, say, for example, butter. Okay, so really only should have 2 ingredients: cream from grass-fed cows and unrefined salt. So wherever you are in the world, so I do that for every category of food. These are the questions you need to ask when you're buying whatever it is, from salami to eggs to meat to chicken to olive oil. And then with personal care products and cleaning products, there are lots of amazing brands now, which is great. But my health coaching clients kept saying, we want a one-stop shop. We don't want to shop at a million and one different places, websites. So the brand that I personally use and trust, which makes it so easy to streamline everything to one place, is Young Living. They're the world leaders in the essential oils movement, and the low tox personal care product, cleaning product range is comprehensive. So literally you can just get everything from one place. We went through all the ingredients with a fine-tooth comb with a building biologist, gave them the tick of approval. So it sort of meets my criteria of threefold. Is number one, it's got to be non-toxic, safe for the 3 Ps, people, planet, and pets. It's got to be super powerful, which they are. And number 3, it's got to be cost effective, which they are, because they're so concentrated you can dilute them. And that's where I've been running every month for the past 7 years, all my low tox workshops to educate people on how to create a wholesale account through us, go low tox, and get access to all our resources, how to dilute the product. So I realized that what women really want is they want to be their family's alchemist and healers. They want a toolkit, a medicine kit, a wellness kit that they can turn to, which is what essential oils essentially are, potent plant botanicals at their core. It's, not alternative medicine. It's the original medicine. It's what we're using before pharmaceuticals. So we want this kit. We want to feel empowered. We don't want to be handing over power to external providers all the time. So whatever issue arises in your house, headache, fever, thrush, UTI, gastro, whatever it is, we want a toolkit that we can turn to. It's in our ancient DNA to be the healers of our family. And of course, we know that these beautiful holistic practitioners are there for the really big stuff. And also what women want is one-on-one support. We want a real life person to talk to, another human, because in our, tribal days, there would be people in the tribe that we would talk and, and say, this is what's happened to my son or daughter, what do you recommend? And we want a comprehensive online resource portal, which is what I've created. So wherever we are in the world, you can just look things up and it's like, okay. And a community that really backs you, a like-minded tribe, so you don't feel weird or different. So I believe if women have the toolkit, their wellness box, they've got human contact, they've got ongoing educational support and resources, then you feel really empowered. And so that's what I set out to create and have created with my low tox oily community. So if anyone's interested, just ping me, DM me, and I can send you a little 18-minute video that you can watch and it sets everything out. Well, there's lots of information on the Essential Oils page of my website. And if you're interested in the food side of things, there's, the health coaching page of my website or the Food as Medicine digital package for those that don't want to do a one-on-one. So anyway.
Amazing. Wow, amazing. I mean, so, as you were talking, you were literally answering every follow-up question that I had. And I'm like, this is so good. I'm getting so much information, and I hope everyone listening was actually able to answer those questions within that as well that they had for themselves and their family. One question I get a lot from people, and this is something that we haven't touched on yet, is the difference in price when it comes to switch out. So I can't go to the farmer's market and not spend a ridiculous amount of money at one certain farmer's market up here specifically, but I spend a ridiculous amount of money every time I go there on fruit and vegetables and on the things that I want to be eating more of. But realistically, that price bracket is unachievable for me every week, and I'm assuming a lot of other people. And I think that's where we get caught up a lot of time, is the difference in price. Why are the healthy swaps much more expensive than what we find on the shelves, and that aren't potentially
the ingredients in them are quality ingredients? And also, if it depends if they're made by Aussie labor with certified organic ingredients by hand and they're artisan, it's just going to be more expensive than something that is made with cheap quality ingredients in China by, a machine, factory workers. So there's a few things here. So as you were talking, okay, the first thing that went off in my mind is I now view real products as this is the cost of real food. So subsidized, cheap crap, say take McDonald's or whatever, that's at the price of that. That's not actually real food. So in my mind, I think, well, this is the cost of real food. The second thing is, well, what am I buying that's empty filler or crappy that I can no longer buy and redirect the resources into the grass-fed meat, the wild salmon, the oysters, the natural cleaner, so on and so forth? Because there will be a lot of, things that people are spending money on. If you really look at your budget and look at, what you're spending on, I really didn't need that, really didn't need that, really didn't need that, The next thing is a saying that I picked up from a building biologist is pay now or pay later. Okay. So, we don't want to be sitting there in our 60s, 70s, 80s with cancer and, Alzheimer's and going, if I only had been more conscious and intentional with what I put in and on my body when I was younger, I could have prevented this. Okay. Another thing is the Clean 15 I mentioned earlier. So they're all, you can buy those things from a supermarket, Aldi, wherever. The Clean 15 in Australia pretty much never sprayed. And another thing is, I know some butchers do things like cow share, or where if you've got the space and the freezer space, I know some people do this, they buy the whole of a cow or half a cow at a much cheaper price. They get it all cut up and freeze it. So also getting things like looking at some of the cheaper cuts of meat. Like I would rarely buy the eye fillet. It's relatively more expensive than the bonier, fattier cuts of meat. And the glamour is in the bones and the fat and the organs. And chicken livers, they have gone up in price since the paleo movement, really took off. And I think I've been partly responsible for that, but they're still relatively cheap compared to, say, your eye fillet, So the fattier, bonier cuts of meat, like chump chops, loin chomps, chicken livers, lamb necks, things like that can be slow cooked, are more affordable. So
they're really great answers, and I think you really closed off a lot of questions there. What about buying veggies that aren't from a farmer's market, for example, but soaking them and putting
that definitely goes a long way. So Young Living have what we call a Thieves fruit and veg soak. So Thieves is very antimicrobial, and it strips away the pesticide residue and the wax. So oftentimes, for whatever reason, because of Mother Nature or maybe location, you can't get chemical-free or organic produce. And this happens to us at Broth Bar every year, like organic spinach will be out of stock, and we have to buy conventional, and then we just soak it in the Thieves fruit and veg soak. Whether or not you'll get the same results with other products, I don't know. I do know the Thieves is amazing, and there's been lots of like Instagram reels where people, you see the color of the broccoli and see that, when you soak it in the Thieves fruit and veg soak, the water really gets absorbed and it's bright green in color. And prior to the soaking, the water would just peel off it because of that waxy residue, and it would be a dull green color. So the contrast is quite phenomenal. So yes, you can do that.
Yeah, that's a great little hack, I think, when you have to be buying produce that isn't organic and isn't ticking the boxes on what you want to be doing in that preventative measure. I think that's a great one.
You know what? I think what you're doing, 80 or 90% of the time, like there's no perfection. Like you can't beat yourself up, because the stress that you will create on your body does more psychological harm than the wax or the pesticide itself,
Exactly.
But sometimes, just really making peace with it, blessing the food and saying, I'm doing my best, especially if you're traveling or out and about, and the emotional benefit you're going to get from enjoying a meal, or even the cake every now and again made with the refined sugar and the refined flour, and, but knowing that you're getting so much emotional nourishment from sharing that with a friend is going to outweigh any physiological damage. And obviously if you've got a certain condition like you're a celiac or autoimmune, you've got to be more careful. So,
yeah, absolutely. Now I know you're a mum of older children as well. Mine are 14 and nearly 12. They're becoming a little bit less easy to manipulate and they want their own choices, and they aren't as healthy as what I'd like. How do you get around that? How do you get around that with your kids?
Oh, it's really hard, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. If I'm really honest with you and your followers and with myself, I think one mistake that I made was being a bit too extreme about them not having any processed food, because as we said earlier, once you can't unknow, and I know the dangers of all the colors and flavors, preservatives and refined grains and refined starches and industrial seed oil. So I'm like really kept them away from that. And that was like forbidden food. And of course, when you hit teenage years, what do people do with the forbidden, whatever it is? You gravitate to it, you flirt with it, you want a piece of that. Okay. So I know from, my strict Greek Orthodox upbringing, no, you can't have an Anglo boyfriend. So what did I do? I ran out and found the first one. So I think, my advice is, in your home is the only place you can control. You bring in and you buy and you cook really nourishing meals. But outside your home, I think not putting energy or making it too forbidden, I think is, if I had to go back, that's what I would have done. So that's the first thing. The second thing is trusting that they've got a really, really good, strong foundation. So the first 7 years of a child's life are the most important. That's where you're really shaping and making, they're really malleable, and you're really shaping and influencing and creating this amazing bedrock, this foundation, and knowing that that foundation is super strong. And yes, in their primary school years, I built this beautiful house on that foundation. And in their teenage years, they're pulling the house apart. They're graffitiing on it. They're blasting it. And it's like so heartbreaking as a mother to watch the house being, desiccated left, right, and center. It's like, oh, you're ruining my handiwork. But trusting that that is their journey. They've got to go through that, and they've got to really feel and integrate the effect that food is having on their body and their choices are having on their body. And the more I steer them away from it and make it forbidden, the more they're just going to do it, and just to really try to healthy swap and fill them up on all the good stuff. So if they're eating lots of, Arnott's biscuits, it's like, okay, I've made some healthier biscuits, or, bought some healthy biscuits, because if they're in my packaging, that's really daggy now for them. So filling them up on that, and sort of having lots of accessible, healthy treats so that they're less likely to get their fix and fill elsewhere if they're getting their fix and fill at home. So that's, some guidance there. And yeah, like if they still, like what I do in the morning for breakfast, they still have their smoothies, I am putting in the 3-4 egg yolks in their smoothies. Unbeknownst to them, I'm breaking open the Young Living Lifeline probiotic capsules and I'm dumping it in there. I'm making their smoothies with raw milk, because in Sydney we can still get access to that. And if you can't, at least get, unhomogenized milk if you can tolerate dairy. So I'm putting in all of the goodness in there. So smoothies are a really great dumping ground for all the nourishment. So if you can do that, then that's great.
That's good. It's a good tip. It's like fill the cup in terms of nutrients.
Yeah.
The pun, but fill the cup with nutrients, so you know that they have received those nutrients at one point in the day. And then if there's a few bad things that pop through, what can you do? Yeah.
And other tips is like, just say I want them to eat more wild salmon because it's so high in omega-3s, which are really anti-inflammatory, but they're kind of gone off it. It's like, okay, I know they love pasta, so I'm going to get a gluten-free pasta, which is just an empty filler, but it's not kind of toxic. And then I use that empty filler as the portal to incorporate really nutrient dense stuff. So, the wild salmon in there. And the other night I made a carbonara with, beautiful full fat cream and bacon, pastured bacon, and they loved it. So using pasta or, risotto rice as the vehicle to get in the more nutrient dense stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, I started this conversation with the discussion around milks, and specifically plant milk. Can you talk to us about plant milks, what's good, what's bad, where we should be directing our attention, and potentially a brand that you believe in Australia anyway, that we can access, even though our listeners are worldwide, but just potentially a brand that you believe in that we can be using, or a way to make our own milk even.
So plant milks have really taken off over the past few years. And I asked people, why are they turning to plant milk? Just because it's trendy doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. So I say to people, what's wrong with just drinking real milk if your body can tolerate it? So there's a big, like in my Food as Medicine digital package and in my health one-on-one health workshops, health coaching, I spend a lot of time really unpacking dairy. And if you have access to raw dairy that's unpasteurized, unhomogenized, most of the time people can tolerate that because it contains the lactase enzymes in it that, lo and behold, digest lactose, right? So when you pasteurize something, you're killing off the lactase. And then a lot of people can't digest lactose. And they're like, I'm lactose intolerant. It's like, then I say, try a little bit of raw milk, and I will just caveat that and say, in Australia, cow's milk that is raw has to be sold for cosmetic purposes, but goat's milk doesn't. So let's just assume I'm talking about goat's milk here for the purposes of this conversation. Okay. So goat's milk is still legal, and that's all unpasteurized, unhomogenized. So most of my health coaching clients will try raw goat's milk and do really, really well on it. And if so, amazing, because it is very nutrient dense. Okay, the issue with plant-based milk is you're getting even if you find a clean brand, you're getting so many, if it's made from oats, like so many grains or nuts in one cup, way more than you would comfortably eat if you were having the whole of the nut. You know, you would never sit down and be able to consume 3 or 4 cups of almonds in a sitting. They're so energy and calorically dense. You just couldn't be able to do that. But yet that's the equivalent of what you're having if you're having a cup of almond milk. And so then a lot of people get, you know, the gas and the bloating and the digestive distress, A, because they're overdoing the grains and the nuts, and B, because most of the time they're not looking at the ingredients and they're also getting a whole heap of refined crap in there as well. And they come to me like, oh my God, you know, I've got all these digestive issues. And I'm like, well, what plant-based milk are you consuming and how many times a day? So I would just say, first things first, what's wrong with just drinking real milk? If you can access it, great. You know, if you're genuinely lactose intolerant, you might do really, really well on raw milk because it's flooded with a lactase enzyme. If you still don't do well on that, then okay, look at other forms of dairy, and maybe instead of doing the plant-based milk, just have yogurt, you know, with your muesli or whatever, because that contains less lactose. So there's other dairy, you know, cream hardly contains any lactose, you know, less than 1%. You know, ghee contains none, kefir. So there's, you know, lower forms of lactose. So look at other real dairy because our body recognizes that and it's nutrient dense. But if you're wedded to doing the plant-based milk for whatever reason or just having it occasionally, so just making sure it's got either a grain or a nut in it that is ideally organic, because in Australia, grains and legumes and nuts are heavily sprayed. So if you're getting non-organic almond milk or oat milk, those grains are going to be heavily sprayed. Okay, so you're getting all this glyphosate and other pesticides and herbicides. And then just making sure it's got as few ingredients as possible. And literally it will be something like an almond or say oat, water. And then once again, is the water filtered or is it tap water? You know, we don't want to be having tap water because it's full of fluoride and chlorine and heavy metals. And then just making sure that, you know, then it will probably have salt in it. Once again, is it Saxa table salt or is it unrefined salt? It's really hard to find a clean brand when you start dissecting it, right? And making sure it doesn't have seed oils. Most of them will have sunflower oil or some other seed oils in it. And it doesn't have any numbers and colors and flavors in it. So at Broth Bar and Larder, there's the brand that we're currently using that is currently clean, may change because as we said earlier, companies can change their philosophies and their ingredients, but it's
Pure Harvest?
Pure Harvest. And it's the Pure Harvest original or the Pure Harvest unsweetened, because we recently changed it. That's why I was a bit, So the Pure Harvest original, the baristas like, there is a sweetener in it, but it's a natural sweetener. I don't have any issues with it. It just makes a better frothier coffee, or you go the unsweetened one if you're at home and, you know, don't care about the sweetener. And then the oat milk, I think we're currently using Oatly, which is very clean. And a lot of these nut milks or grain like milks will have a few different ones in the series. So then you got to sit there and look, like, you know, Nature's Harvest has like there's 5 or 6 different ones. Some are really clean, some aren't. You know, it's a bit like the single ingredient nori seaweed. The same manufacturer will have some that are just in olive oil, or the same with the Boulder chips. You know, some just in olive oil, but others are in the seed oils. So you can't just really now say, is that brand clean? So, well, some of their lines are clean, but some aren't.
I know. And this might sound completely overwhelming. All of this might sound completely overwhelming to someone who's hearing it for the first time and, you know, really thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to start on this journey? And where do I even begin to look? But really what you're saying is ultimately go back to basics and just simplify everything a little bit more, reduce the amount of non-natural ingredients that are in your products, and just start to question things a little bit more than 100%. Taking it at face value.
Start there. That's perfect. Yeah. And as I said, you know, I do have the resources. There's a health coaching, there's my Food as Medicine digital package. They can contact me, fill out the contact form on the essentials page of my website for low tox essential oils. If they're sick of, the pharmaceuticals and the medications and wanting to healthy swap. So there is support there. They can come to one of my, low tox workshops. There's lots of support. Don't feel like you've got to do this alone.
Yeah, you're certainly a woman on a mission to spread this information. You're doing pretty much everything you can to spread the word, and it's definitely been taken on by loads of people. Your community is huge. It's growing, and I personally can't wait to get to your broth. But the next time I am in Sydney, so I'll definitely come and see you. But I'll pop Soulla's links in the show notes, everyone, so you can access and learn more about the information that she's got available. Soulla, thank you so much for everything you've shared today and being on the show.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.